Start singing. My God is awesome.
You are live, sir. Whether you know it or not, you're alive.
All right.
Right.
Well, you
You're
are
live.
too, and they hear you loud and clear.
Oh, man.
All right. Greetings, community. Thank you for
Greetings.
us. We are broadcasting from our YouTube channel tonight, which we're going to work on building upon. This is the Set Neighborhood Alliance Supper Club broadcast for June 22nd, 2026. And we do have some guests in the studio tonight, along with me and Mr. Eric Mashburn, the co-host. Host Reginald Cox. We have Mr. Andrew Ramsey in the house with us tonight. Introduce yourself, Mr. Ramsey.
How's everyone? This is Andrew. I'm just a sailor, just riding along with these two guys right here.
All right, and thank you for joining us. Andrew is going to give us some insight tonight. Online, our core panelists, we have Ann Stacy Wright, who's joining us tonight. Ms. Deborah Walker, the Delray Beach Alliance voter guru. We have Mr. Randall Strong, who needs no introduction. He's on with us tonight as well, representing the Millennial Table. And I think that's it for now. So we're just going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to share my screen a little bit as we get into the discussion. But the Supper Club basically is a group of organizations that have came together in Delray Beach, okay, where we connect the dots and promote civic engagement, okay? And we have discussions about what goes on locally in our community as far as our local government. We look at accountability measures and how we can do that, and you know what we can really do to sustain and keep the messaging alive and well. The Supper Club is a part of our communication plan process, okay, and communication plan commitment, along with the Elders Table, along with the Millennial Table, Faith in Florida, our friends with SEIU, and several other organizations. So as in the past, we're just going to share some of the information with our audience. We had discussed for several months about going to a YouTube format. So I'm asking everybody who have the link to go ahead and share the link. And I'm also asking to monitor it online while we're broadcasting, so we can stay tuned with the information. So if you all can do that, the ones that are able to monitor online, that'll be great. And it is recorded. So we'll be able to come back and look at and improve on some things in the future. All right, so I am going to, let's see if I can do this. See if I can share. Somebody says turn up the volume, they're not hearing anything. Can the panelists hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Okay. All right, good.
Ann's muted right now, but Randall and I can hear you.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna share. Then we're gonna get this show on the road. All right. All right, can everybody see that slide?
Yes, Supper Club broadcast.
All right.
Yes.
So Reginald Cox, we already introduced Eric Mashburn, the co-host, representing the Millennial Table as well. And as in our tradition, we're going to go ahead and just have a quick prayer. Father God, we thank you for allowing us to come together tonight on behalf and the willingness to speak about the issues in our community and the things that many things that's going on in the state, the country, and also in our front yard. We ask you to come into this place and give us the willingness and likeness to uplift our community in all aspects. This is our prayer. Amen.
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 All right. And the flashed on the screen, these are core panelists that comes every week to make up the supper club, and we also invite guests from the community. And so we really want it to be a club, have discussions, keep it real. You know, right now is we're really big on get out the vote campaign in different ways and creative ways we can keep the spirit up and keep the momentum up, notwithstanding all the other issues that are going on in our community. So we want to thank the core panelists for volunteering in those regards. Here again, the mission is the SET transformation plan. It's a community-driven framework that's geared towards building long-term empowerment in the SET community. And we also are in partnership with Historic War. Everybody knows that's the coalition, and they're doing great things. The principles are there. Everybody's familiar with them. Everything we try to do, we try to focus on one of those buckets. And sometimes things that we do in the community cross-pollinates all of those buckets, okay? But these principles are very similar to Kwanzaa. They're communal in nature, and they're based in community building, okay, to keep us on track. So we check in with the principles to make sure we're keeping on track. And tonight is about building community capacity, also civic stewardship. Those are two principles that we're diving right into with the Supper Club broadcast. Elders Table, as you can see, the Set Neighborhood Alliance is made up of Elders Table. Every Thursday they meet. We'll keep broadcasting. We want people to get more and more people to get familiar with that. It's pretty popular. Delray Beach Voters League, Millennial Table. See the South Palm Beach County of the NAACP, the Neighborhood Associations. There's 28 of them historically in the set. Unify, the Volunteer Association with our Haitian community and brethren, and also Faith in Florida collectively makes up the alliance. Sharing, studying, organizing, and acting, okay? This is what we profess to do. And so tonight we'll be doing some of that. This is the menu of the Supper Club. We'll let the panelists chime in a minute. We pick different topics to talk about, to kind of dig into. Tonight, we are going to focus on GOTV, different ways to get out the vote, okay? As far as the local election that's coming up in March, the primary election that's coming up in August, and as you all know, the general election that's coming up in November. And so we're going to be talking about creative ways where we can really, really stay engaged and what we can do to really sustain that importance of driving that home. So we're going to look at some national statistics. We have Mr. Andrew Ramsey in the house tonight. Go all the way back to Carver Middle School, 1980.
That's a long time. That's a long time. That's a long
We go all
time.
the way back. He's in the house.
Yeah.
And Mr. Ramsey stayed the course, and he's a certified public accountant. Amen. And
Amen.
amen. From our community. Okay. So when we talk about transformation, you know, we have many examples. Okay. Decades of examples on doing that. We want to be able to stay afloat, and that's why we do what we do. This information, our culture and what we do, people may ask, well, how do you do this, Eric? How do you do that? Well, I think it's in the blood. I think it's just in the blood. And so he's going to share some national data, okay, about some trending with the national elections over the past. And then we're going to try to tie it into what we do locally here that really we can really begin to understand and keep close to the vest on the power that we really have, okay? Because mainstream may say something different. And we want to just show examples and keep it, I almost said keep hope alive like Jesse. To show, okay, to remind ourselves that we do hold power when it comes to the elections and, and making a difference, we hold that, okay? And we should not squander that, okay? We'll talk about that. All right, and so with that said, that's the menu there. And on the menu, we have the local elections, like I say, the national election. We're just gonna jump right into tonight and focus on, we want to focus on voting tonight. There may be local stories that come in. I'm gonna stop sharing. If there's some local stories that come in from the panelists or some insight that you all have, please share that. And then we wanted to talk about maybe, some solutions, some small solutions that can be realistically done and realistically sustained, going all the way through the local March election. That's coming up. All right, is that all right?
Sounds good.
All right, so let me stop sharing, and then I'm going to ask Mr. Andrew Ramsey a question, and then we're going to just turn loose. So my first question is, how would the United States look? Well, scratch that. How would the world look if Donald Trump would not have became president of the United States? And that's part one. And part two, do you think, based on what you know, as far as national election trends, that the Black community could have made a bigger difference or not, and why?
Okay. First question, how would the world look if he wasn't president? First of all, you wouldn't cause friendship around the world to be strained right now. If you look at our closest neighbor to the north, Canada, and you look at the last 2 years, the relationship between Canada and the United States, the relationship has been strained. That's evident by you look at travel. Canadian visitors to the United States down 15%. Don't quote me, but about 15% over the last year. Then also you look at our relationship with NATO. NATO is a group of nations that have a principle where you fight one, you fight all. And right now that relationship is strained worldwide. So President Trump has caused a lot of damage on the international level and on the national level here and the local level. I think, Reggie, you and I talked about it, and we talk about the power that we have as African American. One of the things that we discuss is, if you look back at 2008, when Obama got elected, Black participation in the election was the highest ever, around 66%.
That's 66% nationwide. That was the highest ever.
Yeah, nationwide.
Roughly.
Because that was Obama's first year. And we all went out there, first Black president, let's go out there and vote. So that was the highest level in 2008. It went down in 2012 when he got reelected. But bringing back to Donald Trump, when he got elected in 2016, Black participation went from 66% to about 60%, down 6%.
And did that what was the difference in that 6%, and in what states? Is this a particular, you can zoom in on some states to give some numbers roughly?
Yeah, I'll give you some numbers. If you look at, in the United States, we all know that the popular vote doesn't win you the election. It's all about the electoral college. But if you go back in 2016, 3 states decided the election. And those 3 states were Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. And if you look at those 3 states, whether it's Philadelphia and Pennsylvania, Detroit in Michigan, and Milwaukee in Wisconsin. You got a large African American population. And if you look at Pennsylvania, he won Pennsylvania by 44,000. He won Michigan by 22,000. And he won Wisconsin by like 2,300. Excuse me, 10,000. So it was 22,000 Michigan, 10,000 Wisconsin, 44,000 Pennsylvania. So you add those three totals up, you're talking about around 80,000 votes decided that election and got us to be where we are right now. And if we had to turn out like we did in 2008, in 2016, we'll be looking at totally different,
Totally different world.
totally
So let
different
me get
world.
this straight just for the viewers. Let me try to sum it up what I think I heard you say. There's the 6% drop
Yes,
in the African American vote.
yes,
Okay, made in those three states, in those three particular states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, in 2016,
yes.
gave Donald Trump the edge.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Because if you take 2016, he lost those three states. Well, no, excuse me, he won those three states and won in 16. Then we saw how terrible he is those 4 years. And 4 years later, Joe Biden won those three states. He became the president.
And what was our percentage roughly then in those three states? Did it go back up
It went back up, but it wasn't to
like
the
the Obama years?
it wasn't to the Obama years, but it did go back up. So when those three states, our participation went up. Biden won in 2020. Then we came 4 years later, our participation went back down, and this is what we have. And go ahead.
No, okay. And thanks for sharing that because I don't know if that resonates with, the multitudes. I'm sure some statisticians may know that, or some scholars or people who are in the business of elections may know that, but that's power, or maybe squandered power. In other words, you're talking about 80,000 between three states and just that close, history could be rewritten different. And we possess that within our community, and we have those numbers there.
Way more than those numbers. You talking
Right.
percentages, 6%.
Right.
You
And so I just wanted to put that out there. We'll zoom in on state and local. We'll have Deborah here in a minute, but we do have, and you all heard of that statement, when we vote, we win.
Yeah. Let me also say this. This is a little bit from the federal level. Let's look at the state level. It's probably changed now, but it used to be a saying about 5, 10 years ago, where if minority participation in Broward and Dade County was at a certain percentage with a certain margins, it wouldn't matter what the rest of the state does here in Florida. Because we have so much population in the southern part of the state. You're talking about a state with like 20 million, 22 million people. Majority of them live in these three counties down here, where we get to turn out at a higher level. We can make up for all the differences that occur outside these three states. But all of that has changed because there's many reasons why we don't vote. One, they don't want us to vote. We may get discouraged. It's a lot of different reasons. You can't pinpoint one reason. But I would say this, for people who say it may not affect them, I would say that's incorrect. And the reason why I say that, and I say this all the time, a president is only around 4 years, maybe 8 years. They're gone after 8 years. But the legacy that they leave, and they leave a legacy at the court level. Okay? I give you this statistic. Ronald Reagan left office in 1988, the year you were born, because you and I just had this conversation before we got in the air.
Put you out.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that. But anyway, he left office in 1988. That's like 38 years ago. I don't know the exact number, but there's around 10 judges that's still sitting on the bench that was appointed by Reagan. And think about that. And think about that. So what made 16, 20, 24 very important is that with us not voting in 2016, we allowed this guy to get in there. And look at the appointments he made on the bench.
Which
So-
we have been a little bit, I wouldn't call it lucky,
Yeah.
but it could have been a whole lot worse. Especially considering what we were looking at, what these people were up for, goodness, confirmation
Yeah.
in their history. I will say that they have been a little bit more moderate
Oh, no.
than we initially
Oh,
originally thought.
let me say this. If you go look at his appointments, there's an organization called American Bar Association, ABA. If you look at his appointments, 16 in current, on the record, worst appointments ever. His appointment to the bench, worst ever.
Wow.
I just read something the other day where he got this little Judge Cannon out of Central Florida, where the appellate court told her, look here, this stuff you're sending to us is garbage. And he's a judge. So whenever she sends, because, you know, judges have review. When they send cases or documentation up for review, she's one of the worst judges ever. So if you look at Cannon here and throughout the whole 12th district, and the thing that appalls me is they like to sit here and talk about diversity and DEI and all that crap. And you look at some of their appointments, it's like it's a different standard. They want to hold us to a different standards. But you putting people on these benches, and these are lifetime appointments. Yeah. And it's like, these individuals are not qualified. So we already know it's a different standard.
So I want to shift over. So that's a good point. I think so. You know, what I hope comes out of this conversation, we begin to understand is the power, I think, that we do hold, that we do possess. Okay, and we really can make the difference. And that's why we have to go out even, you know, you want to give up because you see what's going on. But remember the momentum during the Obama years. And I like to tell people, how do you think Obama got there in the first place? You understand? Donald Trump is a referendum, is what you call course correction on the Obama years. Okay?
Yeah.
And so I like to say, yes, we can again. But the importance of voting and also voting down ballot is, he mentioned that, you know, the judges that the president put in place, and you see what they've done to civil rights. They've gutted, you know, the civil rights bill basically with the use of the Supreme Court.
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
And so, you know, voting is deeper than just the president, but as it relates to those judges, okay, and then Congress, you know, the Senate on who confirms those judges. Okay, so the Senate is important. The underlying premise here is that it affects us no matter whether we like it or not. And the question is, if you're gonna lay down or if you're gonna fight. We've seen examples, okay? We've seen examples because Obama was up there for 8 years. And the legislation that came out of the 60s, that did happen. You understand what I'm saying? And so the course correction, it's like a constant. You can rest, but it's gonna keep coming. It's a lifetime type of commitment. Voting should be a lifetime type of commitment. And I just think that's just a tough you know, climb for, you know, underserved communities and combat it with the challenges that we have today with MAGA, you know, seem like turning the clock back. It's tough, 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 but at the same time, the solution is we squander power. We have the power and we squander it if we don't go.
I think that's like one of the most important things anybody can say is the accountability aspect of it. When you say we squander power, without a doubt, we do. Even when Obama got elected, now Obama got elected, and everybody on the Republican House had a meeting saying that they're going to vehemently oppose every single
That's the politics,
thing
right? He
that
tried to
he was
pass.
going to try to pass.
It blocked his judge appointment.
Yeah, I think that was Mitch McConnell,
Yes. I've heard it.
famous quote. My goal is to make you a one-term president.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, but he looked like Franklin the Turtle.
Yeah. Yeah,
Just as long.
so that was his famous quote and so forth.
So for me, especially as a voter, and it's obviously when we're talking about state, which we really can't touch. I can't do nothing about what they got going on in South Carolina besides speak about it because I can't vote in South Carolina for the people they are putting in office.
Yeah.
But we have to also be very cognizant of how much support we do throw around these candidates and our candidates, especially when we get them in, to make sure that they can get the job done, because we hold them accountable by saying, okay, we're not going to vote anymore because Obama didn't do anything for Black people, but we didn't even go ahead and give him the ammunition after we already done got the guy in the office.
Yeah, well,
That's a good point.
well, what happened when Obama came in 08, you got to remember. So he came in 08. In the next 2 years, you had midterm election.
Correct, yeah.
And historically, when you have mid-year election, the party that holds the executive branch, in this case, the presidency, normally loses, say, approximately 40 House seat and probably like 4 Senate seat. So you got to remember, when he was in office for the first 2 years, he was able to pass healthcare reform. Because, you know, when you pass anything in the Senate without reconciliation, because reconciliation is a 51-49, you need 51%. But when you don't have reconciliation, you need 60% to avoid the filibuster. You got to remember, his first 2 years, he had Kennedy was still alive, and he had 60 votes in the Senate. That's where he was able to pass health care. And what the GOP party did was demonize health care, made it seem like it's the worst thing ever. And then when you had the mid-year elections in 2010, that's when they lost like 60 House seat and about 4 or 5 Senate seat. So from 2010 onward, he couldn't do much because his hands were tied, because you had a Republican Senate and a Republican House. Because you got to remember, just to expound a little, digress a little, you got to remember when Obama was in office, that's when the fiscal hawks came out. That's where your Tea Party came.
Right.
You know,
Tea Party.
so, their concern was, balanced budget, control spending, and all that stuff. And isn't it ironic? One of the things I like to do is when I hear these conservative run their mouth, whether it's on Facebook or what have you, talking about conservatism. If you look at the spending from 16 to 2020, and even from 2024 to now, shucks, I'm thinking Walter Mondale, the president, all the spending going on. And Walter Mondale is the liberal from Minnesota, where when Ronald Reagan won the election in 1984, he won 49 states and lost Minnesota. So you got to be liberal if you spend more than Walter Mondale.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, you look at the spending right now.
Right. So basically, they talk. It's democracy is hypocrisy.
Oh yeah, without a doubt, without a doubt.
And so I want to hear from the online panelists as far as this discussion is concerned, and then I do want to hear from Deborah Walker with how we're going to locally here, keep the fire going, and some strategies around information you can give also to the to the viewers and to ourselves, because we constantly learn. What are we gonna do about it, or continue to do about it locally? Because there's another old saying out there is that politics are local.
Oh, yeah.
And we certainly feel some of those policy decisions here by our commission over the years that say one thing and do another and goes against the best interests of our communities, just like on the national and the state level. So I'm just opening up to the panelists online.
Reggie, this is Deborah.
How you
We're, a lot of things are being said, but I think one of the things that we learned in Orlando 2 weekends ago is that we have to tap into the people that are movers and shakers within their family groups, within their peer groups, and make sure that they are talking to those groups that they can influence and have them influence voters, because we've got a big fight ahead of ourselves. And it's not going to be easy, no matter what plan we come up with. But in Orlando, we talked a lot about that one person, and Reverend Ray Watley talked about having a niece who could influence all of her cousins. And he constantly goes to her and utilizes her to try to help him influence the rest of her cousins. But we've got to get some movers and shakers and have those folks talking to their family members. There's something called My Status uh, when it comes to checking your voting status. For Palm Beach County, it's under the Supervisor of Elections page, and then you tap in My Status, and all it requires is your name and your date of birth, and it actually tells you what your status is. And what I mean by that is whether you are a registered voter, and I'm currently going through all of the people in my church doing this exercise on them, and I found 3 people that are considered inactive. Well, when I followed up, inactive was basically they don't have a good address for them. Now, that's easy enough to fix with a phone call to the Supervisor of Elections office. That's something you can fix when you go to vote. However, when you go to vote, if you fix it there and it turns out you're in the wrong polling precinct, they're going to send you to the right polling precinct if you don't do early voting, if you do voting the day of the election. So I use that example to say we've got to influence people to use early voting. We've got to influence people to use vote by mail. And even if you get a vote by mail and decide you don't want to use it, you can still go into the polling place and vote. But somehow we've got to get the influencers talking to their immediate circles and influencing them to get out and vote, because we need the 66%. We actually need 80% is the number I'm hearing of us as African Americans to vote in these midterms and in the general election if we're going to make a difference.
Go ahead, Andrew. Deborah, I did pull up the My Status page from the Supervisor of Elections.
Okay.
Take a look at the screen. Is that what you're referring to
Yes, it
for the
is.
viewers? And this is where and what can they do here?
If you continue to scroll down, Reggie,
Okay.
it's going to ask you for right there. It's going to ask you for your name and your date of birth. You
Okay.
input that information, then scroll a little bit more. You put a check mark. You got 2 check marks and hit submit, and it gives you all of the information about yourself. It'll tell you where it'll tell you what your precinct number is. It'll tell you whether you have vote by mail coming. It will tell you a wealth of information as it relates to your voting ability. And to me, everybody needs to go to this page and check themselves out just to make sure you're good to go. Even if you don't want vote by mail, it'll tell you whether you're a registered voter. So that's what
There's
I'm thinking people need to do.
No, that's great information. I did go there today and check mine, and I'm vote by mail through 12/31/2026. So that
Right.
means you have to go back and check it every year, Deborah?
That means you have to go back and request vote by mail every year.
Right,
So
right.
in 2027, we're going to have to request it again if we would like it. And the beauty of vote by mail is you never know what's going to happen on election day. And you have 2 weeks for the primaries, you have from August 3rd until August 16th to go in and do vote by mail. And we're there from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. every day of the week, including Saturday and Sunday. So you can come in and do that. And if you come in and there's a problem, you still got time to fix it by election day. Or if your address needs to be updated and you update it, you can vote there. The beauty of voting, doing early voting, is no matter where you are in Palm Beach County, you can go in, show your ID, and vote. We don't have to vote in Delray. I voted in Boca Raton before doing early voting. So any Palm Beach County resident can go into any place where they see an early voting flag waving and cast their ballot. You don't have to wait till election day. You don't have to go to a specific polling place.
That's great information. And I think this type of information, just like people go to the gym and work out, and or they go jogging and go walking for their health. We working out for the polls here. This is
Absolutely.
information that we're going to keep going over. I think this is a great starting point. People can check their status, because anybody can do it. You can just Google it. That's what I just did. Palm Beach County Supervisor election, and it popped right up. So
Yep.
you can check all the things that Deborah stated. At least that's a start,
It's a starting point, right?
and get yourself in shape. So you mentioned the influencers. You all had a retreat in Orlando around, I'm going to call it relational organizing.
Yes.
Because when I hear the word influencers, that's somebody that, they trust you or you trust them. And they have a certain level. I think that's, that's very good advice. I wonder, and in Delray, as far as relational organizing is concerned, we familiar with that and try to, we really, really dive deep into that, particularly with the elders breakfast, the elders table that's been going on for, decades, the relations that come out of that. But I notice, how is it, and I'm gonna just throw this conversation out. The millennials are here. What's your take on that? And do you think that's effective? And how do you see that getting momentum and building on that, or is it already happening?
I think it's just a catch-22 because who are they influencing to, or what are they influencing you to do? A lot of times we do throw faith in influencers, and they do. Well, I don't even call it faith. Faith is in God, but we do go ahead and we charge these influencers to go out and go get people to vote. But if you even look on the far right, for instance, they use podcasts. They use Rogan, they used Theo Vaughn and those guys. And now those same guys that were used to campaign for Trump are now denouncing Trump, and they're doing it live on their podcast because they don't believe in the Iran war and Gaza and what he's actually doing now. So that could be, I think when we're doing an influencer as family to family, it may not be as effective as going to that top guy, but you're also not going to tear down your party. You're not going to tear it down once you put somebody there that completely lied to them and misled them as well.
Do they use that as? Do you think? And I heard you clear. I mean, I hate to put it like this, but do you think that has more as an income-driven, monetized focus at that level?
As far as why that person's on that podcast, I
No,
don't.
well, I'll put it this way. You know, Fox got sued for, they said it was entertainment and they had to pay, right, Drew?
Yeah.
They admitted it.
Let me say a few things about these Joe Rogans of the world and so forth. what you have with these individuals out here, we don't know the money behind them. Let's get that established first. You get a lot of, you might want to call it dark money or what have you, but more or less you got a lot of Republican big money people put money behind these guys. And these guys going out here with these so-called, I'm not even going to call it conservative views, but GOP talking points and so forth. So I don't know, but I'm going to say this. Deborah, I don't know who was at a conference in Orlando. I don't know if anyone from the National Party was there or not, but I'm going to say this. This election coming up is an off-year election. It's a very important election. Okay? We got the governor mansion here in Florida. We got a Senate seat here in Florida.
2 Senate seats. Both of them are up.
Okay, both of them. I thought one of them, but anyway, you got
No,
two
both
Senate.
of them.
We got 2 Senate seats in Florida. You look at all the disenfranchised of the black votes in these southern states, whether it's Louisiana, Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi. So the electorate should be very fed up with what's going on. So we should have a good turnout, and we can make a difference in some of these races at the state level. I'm praying and I'm hoping that we can make a difference and we can show up at these polls, and we can let them know that we can and we will make a difference. And I think that's very important.
I think that so this is just my take on it now, is the fringe voter is who needs to be targeted. Not the people that are in our echo chambers that already agreed they're going now, they're going to go ahead and vote. But we lost a lot of people that now are non-party affiliated because they feel as though that they've been wronged. And now you don't know where that person's going. They're not even voting in the primary because they're non-party affiliated.
However, can I chime in on that?
Yes,
I would
absolutely.
love that. I would love it.
Chuck always gets on me when I say this, but in my opinion, people need to, because a third of the people in the state of Florida are non-party affiliates, which means for the August primary, they can only vote for the judges, the school board, the amendments. They can't even weigh in on the governor, the Senate, and all of those races. But my recommendation is change your party. For the primaries, you can change it. You have up until July 20th to change your party to Democrat or Republican, hopefully Democrat, in my opinion, because they're going to at least listen to us more than the Republicans are. And then on August 19th, the day after the election, you can go back and change back to NPA. And in the general election, you can vote no matter who you are, which party you are, you can vote for everything. So a third of the people are not going to even be able to participate in the primaries as it stands right now in the state of Florida.
Wow. And those are policies. Yeah. And you're talking voter strategy, Deborah, and the reason why I don't think it's not like that on purpose.
I mean, I did it last week, and I'll be candid. I usually don't talk too much about who I'm voting for or what party I'm in, but up until last week, I was NPA. But I did go and change my party affiliation simply to get my ballot. And the reason why I am NPA is because I think the party needs to have the data that said to let them know whether or not the messaging is getting through to their old voters.
Yeah.
Big thing about me is having real political agency. I don't think we can make the decisions up top and say everybody just goes with it and think that people are going to stay with the party. That's how you start getting these little offhand, you see the transformation the Republican Party's gone through, Tea parties and libertarians, and now you have the MAGA. That's where all those branches fall, and that's why all of a sudden now you got this big old monster because they don't build the house upon that.
Well, but I'm gonna go back to something Deborah said. I think those big old houses that they land in and work from starts in the little bitty houses, in the little bitty conversations, in the clubhouses, in the meetings over at, community and neighborhood groups, and it begins to metastasize into that.
Yep.
you know, because they went
Mhm.
after the school districts, all this stuff that we're talking about is written. Everything that we're talking about, we're talking about all the symptoms, but the root of it, we know is written in Rao's book and many other books on, Jim Crow. Okay. And like Andrew said, he was talking about the Reagan years, what the voodoo economics.
Yeah.
Trickle
Trickle down.
down economics.
Yeah.
They still ain't trickled down.
Yeah.
Okay. The statistics
Well,
worse
we
than
have
something. But if you look at the Reagan years was a referendum on the 60s. You got to see this thing when fair housing was approved, and and then that's a whole nother supper club, okay? Because we're not, we can't beat up everything because it's time to vote. But it is historical data and historical trends on what this stuff is cyclical. It's coming back around,
Yep.
So the movement created Obama. You understand? The movement in the 50s and the 60s, that opened the door for a Barack Obama. It may have taken 20 or 30 years. So what are we saying? This stuff takes time. And when we say we must stay the course, it's important that we understand that. What they was going through with Jesse Jackson in Chicago, Martin Luther King, with all that organizing that came out of that era that opened the door for all the legislation in the 60s. Reagan, when he got in, his whole mission was to dismantle that.
Yeah. I think, not to disagree with you, I think another thing you got to consider, if you go back the last from 1980, when we first met at the Carver, you buying those donuts 3 for $1.05. But anyway.
Don't leave that long enough. 3 donuts cost $1.05. Dunkin' Donuts. 3 donuts for $1.05.
But if you seriously, if you go back to 1980, we're talking like what, 46 years? And just look at it. Just look at the math. You get 2 years of Republican Party, Reagan. Then you get Bush first. So that's 12 years. With their policy as far as deregulation, low taxes, and all that, it messed up the economy. It brings in Bill Clinton.
No, not low taxes. No taxes.
No taxes. I'm sorry. Yeah. No taxes.
Right.
Okay. So you bring in Bill Clinton, and he was for 8 years. Then you get the second Bush come in. Again, low regulation, no taxes.
No regulation.
The main thing out of the first Bush and the second Bush was deregulation on Wall Street. And we had the big collapse and so forth. So again, a Republican messed up the economy. Now bring in Obama, okay, to fix it. You bring in Trump, mess it up. So would you have a history of the GOP party coming there with again, low regulation, whether it's the environment, whether it's, no regulation, whether it's the economy, whether it's Wall Street, no taxes, they mess it up, and then someone else got to come in and clean it up. So, that's how it's always been.
And then when you be in the CPA, you understand that taxes are now lower than they've really ever been.
Yeah.
And also the national debt's way up there. So anytime we Democrat jumps in there and they're fixing it, they have to immediately go ahead and they have to spend money in order to get everything back in order. And then when you go on the other side, you start cutting when the GOP cuts.
Yeah.
There's usually a check that gets cut as well.
Yeah.
That balloons the debt once again.
Yeah, I say this, and just think about this. Remember, we had the Tea Party during Obama's last 6 years. We had the Tea Party. And just remember this stat I'm about to give you. Every month, the federal government spends money. Every month. They spend money and take in revenues. April, May and March, they normally run a surplus because they get all the tax money coming in and so forth. But never before, until Donald Trump came into office, the monthly deficit never hit $200 billion until he came into office. Just think about that. If you go look at his history, he's been in office 4 years, that's 48 months, almost 2 years now. So he's been in office for about 60 months. Every month that he's been in office, the monthly deficit has been over $200 billion a month. It probably went down a little earlier this year because they know they've been taking money from tariff and so forth.
Right, yeah.
But absent of those tariffs, his monthly deficit's been $2 billion a year.
Okay,
a month.
let me jump in there. Okay, Mr. CPA. Very good stats.
Mhm.
And I want to go back to something Deborah said. And Deborah, I got a message from you for Chuck Ridley too, who's listening online. I'm gonna let you know what that is in a minute.
Okay.
So it's we you know this thing is comprehensive. This is not one size fit all. Okay. And Gen Xer, we got Gen Xers up here, we got millennials up here. Generation Z, they playing video games, but they coming. Deborah mentioned influencers, and I think this is where connecting those dots are important. Andrew's mentioned something very important. I mean, obviously, it affects the future of America. It affects the future of our bottom lines. I mean, the just ability to survive. How can that resonate? I mean, Eric, does that what he's talking about? Does that really resonate with a millennial? Do they really care about the national? I mean, I'm just. No, hold on. I want him to respond. Hold on, Mr. Drew, because this is important, and I'm tying it back to when Deborah talks about influencers. Even, Pastor Whiteley's young influencer with a family. Is that something that would hit? How would that hit? I mean, would that motivate you to go out to vote because the national debt is historical through the roof, $200 billion a month? Is that relative?
To be quite honest, for me, yes, but for a lot, no. People get really caught up in these really fringe issues that make zero sense, and they've been highlighting the heck out of it. Not like whether it be who can compete in sports, and whose bathroom is this, and this is the messaging that's actually getting these folks all up in arms and raised up.
Well, and this man just said 200 billion. And so when you're teaching your kids about, I try to teach them out about money and spending this, especially when they start making their own money and start seeing that how fast they go, they start thinking different. But these lessons, I know civics. I used to hear back in the day, civics was in high school, civics was in elementary school. Teaching these things that'll make a difference. That can prompt you to say, hey, I want to do something really about helping my financial future from a fiscal sense. And I think tying those dots, connecting those dots could help in that regard because, I mean, he's talking about the real deal.
I'm gonna tell you where it affects everyone. Even for you, it's more important. Every month, when the government's running a deficit every month, that means the expenditures are more than the revenues. Yeah. So they got to make up that difference. They can't raise taxes in the middle of the month or anything like that. So what they do, they go to the credit market. So they issue bonds. When they issue bonds, like right now, what's been going on over the last couple of weeks with this war, these investors that's buying bonds saying, wait a minute, inflation is going up. So you got to give us a little bit more. Because if inflation is going up, that's going to eat into the value of the bonds. So most home loans and credit card loans are based on bond rate. So if you got a high bond rate, particularly a 30-year bond rate, so let's just say the 30-year bond rate is, let's say 5%. Your housing, if you go get a loan, the loan is set on that 30-year rate. Credit cards also. So people don't see it because they don't really look at the dynamics, but debt and the government going to the credit market really affects everyone because you get people into the market to buy houses, people who got credit cards and so forth. So that's a big difference. You just think about when the government is running a surplus, the government doesn't have to go into the bond market to raise money. So you're going to have a lower yield and so forth. Home ownership is going to go up. But, right now you're talking about the federal deficit. I'm talking about the interest on the debt alone is like $1 trillion. So that means they're always going into that credit market to raise money. It affects everyone.
So what you're saying to me makes all the sense in the world, right? People they're seeing it in their pocket. They're seeing it there, but that's not what they're seeing on TV. That's not the messaging they're seeing from
the
either
game.
part.
Yeah.
Like what you said would resonate with all the 90s Democrats and Republicans.
Yeah.
On both sides. That was a very moderate piece of time to where fiscal responsibility and things were really at the forefront. And you can't recognize either party now.
Yeah.
But that's really where I think we actually start making headway and winning, and people start going ahead and creating something different.
Yes.
Who cares what you call it?
Yes.
I want to just call it common sense.
Yes. Makes sense.
Well, here again, that is part of the what we call that word, the okie doke.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Focusing on what color suit somebody wearing.
Right.
Or how they wear their hair.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Versus issues that really is going to affect their livelihood in the future. And so the importance of voting, it just metastasized. Now, Deborah, Chuck said that he agrees with you regarding, let's see.
Changing the party.
Yeah, so what he did, he said, okay. He said he agrees with you regarding the primary election. However, he thinks that the recommendation should come from the MPA leadership, not Democrats.
Okay.
We just wanted to make that point. And he also gives another comment. I'm going to share this, and that's great with social media because I know he's out of town. So thanks for listening in and chiming in, Chuck. He's one of the 4 panelists. The difference between Reagan conservative and the MAGA party. So he's making a distinction between the Reagan conservatives and the MAGA party is that the MAGA party is Reagan. It was clear battle between Republicans and Democrats. This is going back to what Eric was saying. Okay. It was clear.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is the line.
Yeah.
Okay. And he goes on to say that the MAGA party, the battles between, and this is something that I think people miss a lot. And we really, with this broadcast and when we're out there having what Deborah's talking about with the relational organizing, okay, and the one-on-ones with family members, the MAGA party, the battles between the wealthy class and the working class, okay? And because the Democrats have not figured this out, they keep demonizing Trump as opposed to making a class and a caste argument. This has allowed the MAGA party to fill the void with the Make America Great Again propaganda. Because we always say Make America Great Again for who? Mm-hmm. For who? Okay. And pull many working class voters to the Republican Party.
Well, you know what?
So it's a difference in the argument, and the Democrats, he's saying, hadn't figured that out.
Well,
because it is the wealth gap will tell you everything you need to know, and then you have working class white folk working against their own best interests. Okay, working against good, sound fiscal policy. Right. Okay, because he talking about making America great again, which we know means something much, much worse and sinister.
Let me say something about that. If we can look at the mega coalition and so forth, I would say the Hispanic has learned their lesson. Okay, I think they learned their lesson, and
I hope so.
And well, I think they have learned their lesson. So we can see, maybe we'll see the Democrats finally win a statewide election in Texas this year. Because if they don't win a statewide election in Texas this year, they'll never do it. Because from what I'm seeing, it should be very favorable. Let's look at farmers. I think they kind of learned their lesson also. Because if you look at Iowa right now, and that's the Hawkeye state, a red state. You got Democrats leading for the governor's race, and Democrats also leading for the Senate seat. What's going on over there is, if you look at farmers, you look at the soybean farmers, from the tariff and so forth, they lost a lot of money. A lot of things that people don't really realize also. If you look at fertilizer, they use fertilizers to fertilize crops and so forth. Well, guess what? Most of that fertilizer come over there from Iran and those areas over there. So there's a shortage of fertilizer. So you got the farmers who are losing money on the soybean crops. They have on the revenue side. They also have a higher cost on the fertilizer side. So if you look at those farmers in Iowa, Nebraska, those Midwest states, I think they learned their lesson, and we should see it. We can see it this year. Just put it this way: if the farmers and those Hispanics haven't learned their lessons over the last year and a half, there's no hope.
Okay. And something else I wanted to talk about with this MPA situation, when you complete your voting, fill out the registration form to vote, it requires you to complete 1 through 6 and 15. Your party affiliation is number 11, and many times people don't check that box. If you leave that box blank, they automatically put you into the no party affiliation. So that's what's happening with some people. They don't even realize that they haven't selected a party, and as a result, they get thrown over into that party. So that's another thing to check when you go to your My Status page.
Okay. Oh, thank you, Deborah. Let me say something. I don't want to take over, but I want to say something before it
I'll
gets
let you take over. Go ahead.
before it gets too late. I want to say
It's
something.
almost too late. Wrap it up.
Okay, we have an amendment that may be on the ballot this November. It talks about sales tax, property tax exemption and so forth.
Yes.
I'm not gonna tell anyone how to vote, but I'm gonna give you my opinion. If you're a working class person, if you're a person with kids, grandkids, or if you're in the minority, that's a bad policy. Okay? Because you have a governor who has spent the last year and a half to devise a plan to do away with the state property tax. No input from the party from the other side. This is all Republican plan drawn up by the Republicans. So they just looking at cutting the taxes, but they did not put any study together or talk about how are we going to pay for these services or make up for the money that's we taken away from the municipalities. So they're just looking at one side. So I guess their argument is, let's do away with it. All the chaos and the hardship that it's going to bring, we'll worry about that later. I explain why it's a bad policy. We all know the Supreme Court case that used to say separate but equal. They say that's unconstitutional, separate equal. You had municipalities that wasn't providing enough for education, K through 12. It was an imbalance. Rich counties were able to provide it versus poor counties were not able to provide. Florida devised the property tax, where a lot of people don't know, when you pay your property tax, doesn't matter what county you're in, there's 67 counties in the state. Part of that money stays local. Another part of it goes to Tallahassee, and they divvy that money up and spread it out to the 67 counties. And if you take away those revenue sources from the municipalities, how are they going to make up for those lost revenues. We're going to pay when it comes to services. We're going to pay when it comes to education and firefighters, police, parks and recs, everything. And I remember in the late 80s, early 90s, when Lawton Childs fought the tobacco companies. And the Republicans were totally against it. They ended up getting a record verdict. And I remember Lawton Childs said, we as a state would do better if we take money and invest it in education. So they will put the money in K through 12. Because his rationale was, if you don't educate these kids K through 12, you can put the money in corrections when they become 18. Because when these kids come out of K through 12 and they don't have a viable skill, no education, they're going to turn to committing crimes or what have you. So you got to invest. You either invest in education or you put the money in corrections. So to me, I think the state does well when we have an educated workforce and we have it where young kids K through 12 have opportunity. You know, I hear the arguments that some people complain, oh, I'm middle-aged, I'm 55, I don't have any kids, why should I pay property tax? Sometimes you make a sacrifice, you help each other out and so forth. But again, I think that policy doing away with the property tax, bad policy. But just my opinion.
And
Reggie,
30
can I?
seconds. Go ahead, Ann.
They're waking up. It's
Yeah,
almost
you
time
brought
to
up
go, and
some
they're waking
very,
up.
oh yeah,
Go ahead, Ann.
you brought
Go ahead,
in
Ann.
some very good points there. And I really think that that topic there is a topic all by itself and should be discussed, brought on the supper club, not including other different area, because there are a lot of questions out there. And people are saying, well, they tell me that, well, you gotta pay, it's gonna save you, it's gonna save me money during the year. I don't have to worry about the taxes, but they're not understanding what are the consequences of these taxes being cut. But I think it's a topic that really needs to be talked about and vetted out and bring whoever you got need on the set, experts or whatever, and talk about it. But we really need to talk about that subject, because a lot of us are saying, okay, I'm not going to have to pay taxes anymore. And not realizing the big effect is going to come down to the poor people. They're the ones that are really going to have to pay for it all.
Well, the bottom line is we live in a community. We don't live in a vacuum. And, the alleys, that takes bond, the golf course takes bonds. I mean, all that lost revenue. And you know what areas, for example, what area needed a CRA in 1985?
Right.
Has the job been done? If you take more resources away from the areas that lag behind, what's going to happen? Now you got a bigger built-in excuse. Well, we ain't got the money. They did that with the state. You understand what I mean?
Right.
So these things do need to be examined. And anything, DeSantis does, y'all already know what time that is.
I think we all just need to be really honest about what this is, because what's your bigger expense, your property taxes or your homeowner's
The
insurance?
homeowners, that's the reform that's
Thank
needed.
you. That's what needs to be reformed.
That's the
But-
reform that's needed.
And when you have Rick
Can I-
Scott sitting there, he's not inviting the competition to get that part
Rick
figured
Scott
out.
done robbed, he robbed
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah. And you know the thing about it? It's funny you said that, because you got
That's the debate.
the legislator that will allow companies to sell home insurance, and turn around and in the insurance market also for cars and so forth. As that's my biggest argument, because here I am a safe driver and I'm paying tremendously more than I should be.
Right.
So you talking about reform, insurance should be reformed.
Right.
You know-
That is not a bill for the working class.
Yeah.
That's a
let's-
that's an okey-doke bill.
Can I make a suggestion? Let's talk about the property tax after August 18th. But Andrew, I agree with you 110% because they take that away. We're going to have to make it up someplace else. And Ann is exactly right. A lot of people don't understand that. They think, oh, I'm going to save some money. You're not going to save any money. Something else is going to go up. That 6.5% we pay for taxes now is probably going to double. Something's going to go up. They've
Well, I
got to
think,
make that money
yeah,
up someplace.
yeah, I think that's a good idea to keep bringing it back and really just, we're gonna look at some case studies and, you know, there's AI out there now. And let's really drill down on some great simulation with the percentages putting in with expenditures that the cities currently have. You know, Derry just put a $30-some million bond out there for the golf course.
Yeah.
And then for the alleys. And then you see what's going on at Pompeii. So if less revenues come in, like I said, we know what we need to look and see the numbers so we can really, really see it. But in our gut, everybody know who's gonna get the short end of the stick.
Think about this. Think about this for a minute. Okay,
That's forgiving.
think about this for a minute. We're in a state that has no personal income tax.
Thank you.
Okay, now they want to do away with the property tax. I'm gonna tell you a tax that a lot of you all probably not are aware of that they got rid of. I think under Rick Scott or I think on Rick Scott. We used to have a tax called intangible tax. That intangible tax used to collect like $5 billion a year. The intangible tax was if you had any investment that was more than $20,000, you pay like 2%. So in other words, if you had $100,000 in investment, you back out 20,000, you paying 2% on that $80,000. They did away with that tax, and that tax was bringing in like $5 billion a year. $5 billion a year. So I'm saying to myself, when you're living in a state, you got to take care of your elderly. And you got to take care of you got to take care of your kids. If you don't have a property tax or a state income tax, no intangible tax, how are you going to take care of your kids and your elderly?
You're actually
Right.
you're actually not, and most people think because I'm a renter, I don't have to worry about that. I don't pay property tax. Well, you do have to worry about that because your landlord is going, when that increases or whatever becomes of it, he's going to increase your rent. So you are paying property taxes.
Oh,
You just may not be paying on your property.
As it relates to what you just said, and this tax only applies to a property that's homestead. So that renter, more or less, that's an investment property. Municipality or even the state may raise the rate on those type of property. And when they raise the rate, that the owner tax is going to go up, and he's going to pass that increase on to the renters.
He's gonna pass more than that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the trickle down, Reagan, we're talking about.
Mhm.
One statement, Chuck also chimes in on this. He basically said the property tax referendum is a perfect example of class war, not an ideology war. Okay, it's a class war, not an ideology. And so that's basically really what we're talking about. You know,
And getting rid of property taxes is basically going to help the wealthy people. That's who's trying to get rid of it.
Right.
Because
Yeah,
they're
right,
the ones
right.
that are having to pay through the nose on that. But they should continue to pay.
Right.
You got it, pay it.
Yes. Yeah, and he
It's not
goes on
gonna
to
do
say the
anything to
real
help
point
us.
is we need to move from the paralysis of the analysis to ain't nobody coming to save us. And that's it, you know, and I mean, child slaughter, that was ideology from investing in K through 12.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Versus, you know, beds for prisons.
Yeah.
That's the ideology, you know, and we just have to, we're gonna have to educate our K through 12 and find more muscle and work out more. Keep, you know, I learned something tonight. You learn from anywhere. Okay, thank you, Andrew.
Well, I hope to come back to the supper club. I don't want this to be a one-time shot in the dark, shot in the dark. I hope I'm a welcome guest.
Absolutely.
I can come back. I enjoy my time here.
We're building the conversation here locally. You know, it starts in the neighborhood and it can metastasize. You know, one-on-ones, little small groups. We learn, we teach each other things. You know, we have legacies to protect and legacies to leave behind. Okay. And so, like I said, man, I thank you. You know, like you said, you brought up Carver Miller back in the 80s, and I got three donuts for that.
Long time ago.
But I had my own $5.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. With the briefcase. With the briefcase.
Okay. Run into that cafeteria, $5. How much a donut, Dunkin' Donut costs now?
Man,
35 cents back then. Probably $2.
It's probably
$3
close to $2 and $3 now for one donut.
I used to get them for 35 cents.
35 cents each.
All right, we got a couple of announcements, and then we're going to wrap up. We'll be back with the club on the two second Mondays and the fourth Mondays of the month. We do have the elders table this Thursday. Is that correct? I'm correct on that, Ann?
You're correct. Yes.
Okay, Deborah, thank you. And then I got a couple of announcements, just things I want to share. And then if I miss something, y'all jiggle around your GOTV efforts. Deborah, go ahead and put that out. But we do have the save the date, June 29th. That's the gubernatorial forum at St. John Missionary Baptist Church. That's in Boynton Beach, 900 North Seacrest Boulevard in Boynton. And that is on June 29th. That's next Monday.
That's next Monday.
And it said the doors open at 5:30. Candidate question starts at 6:30.
We have to go through security. That's why the door is opening at 5:30. So there will be lines to get inside.
They got to go through security. Okay. So I want to share that, and just in case somebody looks at this in the middle of the night. So that's that form, very important. I think, Deborah, isn't like 20-some people qualified for that?
Yeah, unfortunately, 25 people have qualified for the governor's race. I don't know who's going to show up. Ray sent out 25 invites, but he hasn't given me any idea of how many people have responded. We know for sure David Jolly will not be there. He's supposedly sending a surrogate because he has another commitment or some foolishness.
Okay. Well,
is what I said too.
Yeah, bingo.
That's disrespectful of us.
Yeah.
Because he's been known about this a while ago.
Yeah, bingo. Yeah. We had a couple of them do that down here and they didn't make it. Okay. And then the next, let's see, we have Sounds of the Set on June 25th. That's this Thursday. And that is this at Libby Wesley? Y'all help me read this. Let me see.
Yes, at Libby Wesley.
Okay, it's at Libby Wesley.
That's typically where it is.
Yeah, it's at Libby Wesley Plaza.
Okay, and this is Mayrene's Southern Cuisine flyer. Okay, looks pretty good to me. Makes you almost think about some supper. Okay, let's play on, little supper club humor. And okay, any other announcements? That's all I had. I'm gonna stop share before we close out. Any last announcements?
If you are interested in hearing Jerry Demings, he will be the guest speaker at our Men's Day program on this Sunday, the 28th at St. Paul AME across from the Spady Museum at 4 p.m. He is still speaking as our Men's Day speaker.
Yeah, that's her husband. Yeah.
Well, I guess I'm gonna take the time to thank Ms. Walk, Ms. Deborah. You mentioned switching over the parties just so we could vote in the primary, and I had already intended to do that, but you gave the urgency when you started talking about these dates. So yes, the NPAs do need to go ahead and reach the other NPAs, but if we don't know the time frames and dates because people are being quiet, that doesn't serve us. So I just keep talking. We are listening. I don't plan on
July
being
20th.
here
Don't
forever.
worry. Every meeting I go to, I ask for permission to speak about voting. So July 20th is the deadline to register and change your party.
July
It's in
20th?
history.
Okay.
July
Our
20th
audience,
is the deadline. Yes, and then you can change back on August 19th.
that's great
Also, I
voter
want to
strategy.
Yeah, Reggie, one thing I want to remind people is that if they have any questions about voting, the one good thing is that Ms. Walker will give her phone number out and you can give her a call. That's for
Absolutely.
anyone.
Absolutely. 305-924-6502. I will talk to anybody about voting
Thank
and
you.
meet you somewhere if I need to get you registered.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Deborah Walker is the president of the Derry Beach Alliance Voters League. And please, do not mind you following up at all. And before we wrap up, we do want to, what is this thing here? I'd like to acknowledge our sponsors, Visual Adjectives, okay? And this is their website. And as you can see, about us on the screen, it's a production company of authors, cultural curators, educators, artisans, and artists of creative intellectual properties. They believe that a visual adjective is any artistic or literary means to describe the concepts in our mind. Ultimately, it is about action. We had some action here tonight. So we are in line with that mission. Visual Adjectives is a hybrid publisher. Y'all folks who want to tell them stories right here in our neighborhood on historic Northwest 5th Avenue. They provide production services and solutions to get your books published. And I know it is a lot of books out there yet to be written. So we want to thank Visual Adjectives. We are at their studio with this broadcast tonight. And this is a part of the set principle community capacity building. Set principle community capacity building complete. Thank you. And this ends this broadcast of the Set Neighborhood Alliance Supper Club in the Set. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a wrap, Tom.
I gotta come back to the salt.
That man. I enjoyed you.
We're gonna get some stuff in here too.